I'm Tim Gula, and I'm here to introduce you all to the Reilly method and how it's broken down and applied in your drawing.
Tim Gula studied under Fred Fixler, who studied under Frank Reilly. I met up with Tim to watch him do some Quicksketch using the Reilly method. Enjoy.
I begin my drawings by first taking a good, what I'd call visual gulp of the model and the pose, and try in my mind's eye to break it down into its most simple and visible diagram. First, I'll start off with the head. I always start off with the head because that's where I begin in my proportions. So I have a proportionary guide to keep everything to scale. And then I'll start by making features. I keep the shapes very simple. The angles of the skull for the cheek, neck, shoulder. And I'll apply, say, even the line like that for the shoulder to help the pose become more discernible. See these nice flowing rhythm lines rather than kind of a jagged, like most people draw with. Instead, we've been taught to have these nice flowing rhythm lines because that helps the pose become more convincing. All these things kind of start to work together to make the pose more recognizable. See how I just use the nice smooth rhythm lines. I try not to get hung up at this point. I try just to establish the pose, the shape, the weight, the rhythm, all the things needed to make it natural looking. Breast line, see how I make a circumference like that. And think in terms of it being rounded. Use the rhythm lines to help establish that. It's like a blueprint. What you put down initially is just to get the ball rolling. And then when you come in later, you'll notice where it really ought to be or not. And then you can just make the necessary alternations. It's okay. Keeping it simple, nice and simple. All I'm interested in is placement and also proportions. It takes a while to get there, so do not be discouraged. You just got to hang in there. And the more you do that, the more the information becomes clear and available to you. This kind of drawing that I just showed you, this automatic drawing, life drawing workshops, is very important because it keeps your sense of who you are intact. If I could pass on a message, it's that. And keep practicing and make sure your heart's in it completely, because then you'll see its fullest benefit available to you. All right, so I'm going to try my best to describe the rhythm lines and how they're used in its most basic and practical way. Okay, so when I draw, the first thing I do is I look at the model and I break down the model shape into, in my mind, lines. And these lines are rhythm lines. And what a rhythm line is a line that has a nice flow that kind of complements the form and the action that the model's taking. So for instance, what do I mean by that? I'll start off with the head, and I'll just make a diagram impression of the head. Now I have the head to use for the size proportion of the rest. Then I'll have the neck. Okay, now here's where the rhythm line comes in. So say the pose is a back view and it has a slight twist. So I'll go where the shoulder begins. That would be the arm. Then another rhythm line for the forearm. Then back up towards the shoulder, connecting to the torso. Then here's another rhythm line, see where the back would be. That forms the torso and the rib cage. Then where the forearm is, on the waist. So these rhythm lines, they're kind of you want them to flow, because then that way you capture the action more convincingly. like a fashion drawing almost.
How's it like fashion drawing?
Kind of what you don't see much anymore, but like say the art of like Rene Grau, who kind of was an inspiration to my teacher, Fred Fixler. His fashion drawings have these nice kind of flowing rhythms. It's almost like the fabric just is naturally drapes over them. You just have to get used to like being able to create like these nice flowing lines, and that takes practice. But by watching like this video and seeing how I apply it, you'll know what to practice and how to help you become more competent and confident with something that at first is going to be probably intimidating and confusing. But just keep the shape simple, keep the rhythm lines clear and nice and flowing. Then you start applying the other parts of the figure. But first you have to have the armature, the figure itself, broken down nice and clear. And that's what these rhythms lines help establish. Start off with the head. See also how I put the ear on the side so I have a nice idea of the circumference of the head and the face. I give myself landmarks like that. And when I say landmark, it's like I'll put the nose in a certain place, or the ear, and then the cheek. Everything I can do to help make the figure more obvious and discernible. Little cheating tricks. And see, even like where I would imagine that the model the weight is shifted so this shoulder would be more risen than the other would, which be more lowered, which would create that balance. And then once I have that, I'll make a nice rhythm for the torso. And see, I'll put in a line like that to show where the rib cage ends. You have to practice looking carefully and understanding what you're looking at. Once again, getting those shapes nice, clear, using those rhythms to really show the action and the shape of the action. At first, just make the shapes simple but clear so you can come back later and make them even more definable. The real secret, though, to all this is through practice. There is no way that you're going to just get this all of a sudden. Well, maybe there's someone out there that might have like an amazing, miraculous advantage. But the rest of us, like say me, had to spend a lot of time understanding this. It's kind of like a hieroglyphic language. It's hard to, at first, understand what, and then you begin to understand what the images and the shapes make, and then you're able to follow. And that's what kind of is going to happen here. And an intuitiveness then becomes more and more available to you. And somehow you start knowing, and you're not even sure how, but just by looking, a recognition takes place, and like, oh yeah, that's how that came about. My career as such started in 1980, and it was started at Hanna-Barbera. And that's where I met a guy named Alex Toth, who was a pretty darn good artist himself. And I started by drawing concepts to weird science fiction type shows. And there I went from there to Bakshi, working on Fire and Ice, where I met Frank Frazetta, which was a uninspiring film, but it was great experience, and especially working with Frazetta. And from there, I worked at Disney on The Black Cauldron. I started working at DC on Superman and Martian Manhunter and books like The Spectre. And the more that you practice this wholeheartedly, the more you'll believe in yourself and what you're capable of. And then kind of like a magic takes place. You start doing things that you didn't think possible. See, and then you get this stuff and you tuck it away in your memory banks. And then when you're doing like a future project, all the experiences from, like, say, that you're obtaining now, they come in handy later on